Alright guys, welcome to my first ever movie review on the channel. So I'm choosing to do Mortal Kombat as my first movie review because I am a big Mortal Kombat fan. I've played every game. I really like the lore of Mortal Kombat, although it's not like I'm out here reading the Mortal Kombat encyclopedia. So, full disclosure, and I'm not going to do any research before a video because that's just ridiculous. But I wanted to talk about some things that, I guess we'll talk about a couple of things that I liked in the movie, and then I'll kind of go into a rant. So I gave the movie a 5.3. It's not a completely terrible movie, and I think if you're not super into Mortal Kombat lore, or if you're just kind of looking for a good, really dumb action film, then this will have something for you. So I can understand if people give it a little bit higher than a 5.3. If you give it anything more than a 6.4, you're just lying to yourself. I had some friends at work tell me, it's like, oh, this is a great movie. It's not. The dialogue is awful. So let's start there. And let's real quick, let me preface with, I've seen some reviews. I absolutely despise when people say, oh, Mortal Kombat doesn't need a story. It's just about the great action scenes. That's lazy. There is a story in Mortal Kombat. It's a pretty decent story. It's been retconned a few times, and after 11 games, 11 canonical games, and then there's Mortal Kombat Conquest and Mortal Kombat Special Forces. So I mean, there's a lot of games, so things do kind of get mixed up. But for the most part, there's a pretty hard to get wrong overarching story that I think is actually really good. So let's talk about the film and how that correlates then. So Jax, I think they did okay. There's a pretty good portrayal of Jax, and I think Jax is kind of a hard character to pull off. Sonya Blade, I thought was really good too. I had no problem with Sonya Blade. I thought the actress was great. Kano steals the show in every single scene. Although I did at some point kind of get sick of the constant joking around with Kano, but when it works, it really works, especially in his introduction. It's awesome. I was really concerned with Liu Kang because they put him so far on the back burner to start, and then he doesn't really have any kind of story until this very intimate scene where he's kind of talking to Cole, and kind of goes into his backstory a little bit about being a street kid who's kind of been brought in to help train Kung Lao, and Kung Lao's really the star of the show. I was like, okay, I could see where that arc will go, and so I came around a little bit on it, but at first I didn't really love it. Kung Lao though is he's arrogant. It's everything a Kung Lao should be, I guess. It's not terrible. He's got the hat, and he sees himself as the descendant of the great Kung Lao, so he sees himself as very important. And the actor does a good job. The actor for Liu Kang does a good job. But there are some things that don't really work, and the biggest thing that doesn't really work is Cole. And I was kind of excited. I don't have a problem with Louis Tan. But maybe I should. I don't know. The acting, maybe it just wasn't good enough writing for him to get into it, but it sure felt like he's a terrible actor. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe he's a great actor and the writing was just terrible, but just the whole character, the whole arc, his powers, everything about it, awful. Let's talk about the powers real quick, because they make up a story for how the powers come to be. And I don't have a problem with that. At least it made some kind of sense. So I have no problem with that little addition into the Mortal Kombat universe. Raiden was awful. No presence. Not wise. Inconsistent power leveling. I hate that kind of stuff. It's like he has the ability to teleport anybody anywhere. And so Shang Tsung shows up to fight before the tournament, which is another thing we'll talk about in just a second. And instead of just sending them away, he creates a dumb force field, and then later on sends them away anyway. So he's got this ability to teleport anybody anywhere, and yet he makes a convoluted, stupid force field thing that's just a plot device for Kano to turn bad. Sorry, spoilers, by the way. So then, Shang Tsung also acting not great. He has voice modulation in some scenes and no voice modulation in others. Melina, not really done any kind of justice. And I understand that you need some villains to kind of be fodder in this one, but having Melina go out or get the spotlight before you have Katana to really bring in that character dynamic just feels like a weird, stupid choice. I don't know. Just you made up a good guy character, make up some bad guy characters to die. Other good things, and the costume design was actually really cool. I liked that. Sub-Zero and Scorpion, that's the story you kind of have to get right. And for the most part, like, the general theme of the story is articulated properly. The ancient rivalry between the two clans. However, the two clans aren't really expanded on. So, he's like, oh, for the Lin Kuei, for the Shirai Ryu. Who are those people? You don't ever see them. You don't know much about the independent clans themselves. And so that's going to lead me into my biggest rant and the thing that I despise the most, because I've seen one reviewer talk about this, Jeremy Johns, and I love Jeremy Johns. So he, I guess, maybe corrected me, because I guess I was wrong, but he says that the Quan Chi aspect is a retcon from Mortal Kombat 3, that originally Sub-Zero is just a bad guy and Scorpion's a good guy. I don't remember it that way, but it's also, I'm not going to go back and replay Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 to find out. I'm going to tell you how I understand the story to be, and what I think is generally accepted as the story to be. It's definitely the story in Mortal Kombat 9, which is kind of like the reboot of the franchise, and I think it's the better version of the story regardless. So Sub-Zero is more of a anti-hero. He's got his own game, and he helps defend Earthrealm. I think he's kind of paid to steal Shinnok's amulet for Quan Chi, and at the end of that game he says, like, nah, I'm not giving you the amulet. So Quan Chi gets pissed, corrupts the memory or the battle of Sub-Zero and Scorpion, so that basically it's portrayed as though Sub-Zero killed all of the Shirai Ryu and killed Scorpion's family also, and that sparks Scorpion into his revenge plot. He's got to go back, because that's a pretty awful thing to do. And so then later on, he enters the tournament as a bad guy to kill Sub-Zero, and Raiden tells him, you shouldn't do that. But in the moment, Quan Chi shows him an image of his family being slain again by Sub-Zero, and Sub-Zero says, hey, I didn't do that. He kills Sub-Zero anyway. And I think that is important for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's just better character development. Scorpion's a good guy. Henzo Asashi's a good guy who, something bad happens to him. He gets right up close to that line. He breaks the line, breaks bad, kind of, and then is later, shown the error of what happened there and goes back to being a good guy. Sub-Zero is kind of a borderline character who then this thing happens, and then he becomes Noob Saibot and becomes a full bad guy. And this isn't just important for those two characters, it's important for Kuai Liang, Sub-Zero's brother. Because Sub-Zero's brother is on a quest to clear the Lin Kuei name and to kind of redeem his brother. And if your brother is just a dickhead from the start, then there's nothing for you to redeem. So why would his brother could just sit there and be like, oh yeah, well, I guess he killed your whole family. He's kind of a dickhead. And that's the movie, and that's the route this movie takes, is that Sub-Zero is just, which is cool. Like, I like Sub-Zero. I like what they did with him in the natural world. He's scary. The scene where he goes into the warehouse and the cloud of ice and dust follow him in. He's got an awesome presence as a bad guy, but he also has an awesome presence as a neutral character too. I just think that this part will rob Kuai Liang's character. And Kuai Liang, I guess, would technically be my favorite character, the second Sub-Zero, or the third if you count their grandpa. But I think that arc needs I think that they need that kind of intertwining arc of good to bad, bad to good. And without it, it's just a bad guy and a good guy, and it's just too easy, and I think it betrays the source material. I'm going to wrap this up because I'm getting close to 10 minutes now, and I'm filming on a GoPro. It's my first time using the GoPro, so I have to figure out how to edit and stuff like that. But Overall, like the movie has some redeeming qualities. If you're a fan, you should check it out just because you're a fan and you love the source material. That's why I watched it. I'm a fan. I love the source material, so of course I'm gonna watch it. But it's very disappointing because the movie could have been so good, and it hits a lot of really good notes. It gets right up there, but my God, they don't even have the fucking Mortal Kombat tournament, and it doesn't make any sense. Like the explanation for it of like, oh, we need this tournament, but really we'll try to assassinate you before the tournament. And all the gods won't do anything. Well, then why didn't you just show up with an army from the get go? I don't understand. I don't understand. Yeah, God, it's there's just some absolutely baffling decisions that I think really hold the film back. It's a 5.3 that could have easily, without a million cuts in the fight scenes, it could have easily been jumped to like the mid to high sixes, and then with just a few more tweaks, like this movie was probably never going to be a 10. It's never going to be Citizen Kane, but it could have easily been on par with something maybe akin to The Raid or something like that. I mean, it could have been in the sevens to eights. I mean, it really could have with just a few tweaks. And god damn it, just not having Johnny Cage and the audience vehicle being this character that no one fucking cared about. I don't get it, man. But that's my first movie review.